Hello, this is National Chess Master All Rats. I'm here at chess.com. This is a video submitted by mvtjc. This is in my members post your best games of chess thread, where every member of my video lessons group may post a game and I'll make a video. Now, if you don't want to post like your best wins and something, if you want help with a certain game, that's fine too. I'm accepting anything. My preference is that you don't submit a blitz game because that's going to be full of impulsive moves and errors, but I can still make a comments on it. This was played in a time control of 30 minutes for each side. Not the ideal time control, but if you're just making a seek on chess.com, it's difficult to get a game of a longer time control. So I've set up an alternative in my video lessons group. There's a thread where you can make yourself available and negotiate a time control. Now there's a 45-45 group going for games, which is fine, but that's really not your ideal time. I play it over at another server, and it's simply really for me not enough time. Your best time control is a minimum of 40 moves in 90 minutes. And ideally you'd like to go say 40 moves in 2 hours and then a second time control. They really don't have secondary time controls here, so maybe make a longer game, because this is how you improve at chess. You have to play these longer time controls. A good game of chess should last a minimum of 4 hours. Okay, that's what it's all about. If you want to get good, you're going to have to play the long, slow games, and the alternatives. Here at chess.com, you can find an opponent around your rating and negotiate a time. One drawback with tournaments is there's always a large number of forfeits. You have to negotiate a time, and then somebody fails to show up, and there's no game played. That's no fun. I would rather lose a well-played game than win a game by forfeit myself. But anyway, 30-minute games are a substitute. They are a way to learn a little bit. Unfortunately, you're run out of time at 30 minutes, and if you use all your time early, you could be left having to scramble in blitz mode, and then anything can happen. But it's my contention that this rating level, there's a lot of points to be picked up if you're careful. You have to be careful because of the number of mistakes that the players are making, and in this game we're going to see mistakes from both sides. So ideally you want to cut yours down, and if you do, this is what my lesson 1 says: reduce your errors, find your weaknesses, reduce your errors. Therefore, you'll win games that you wouldn't have normally won playing your old style, and then your rating goes up. And what happens when your rating goes up? Well, you're going to find yourself often paired with higher rated players, which is good. Even if they beat you, you're learning something from them. You're finding what they're doing and adapting to it. So this game swings back and forth. We'll see here as we go on. Okay, so we've got the Lopez, and this is what they call the Steinitz defense deferred. Okay, and a full analysis of it is kind of beyond the scope of this video. It's old-fashioned. It's not a bad line. I studied it back when I was a teenager. Like I say, it's not bad at all, but you have to know it. Okay. Now, White's next move is an impulsive one, and I think it's premature, and it gives gives Black a chance to actually pick up some material out of the opening if White's not careful. Okay, D4 is premature, usually in the Ruy Lopez. Generally speaking, you don't want to make this move until you've got a little more activity. Usually the pawn needs to get up to C3, and Black has some interesting alternatives here. Again, I don't know the entire book theory on this. White's threatening to win. Well, he's not really threatening to win a piece. He's threatening to pin this knight, and what Black will have to do is then play B5, and if White takes on C6, Black gets a couple of doubled rook pawns. Okay, it's not all that bad, but it's not all that good. Black's going to have to stop and regroup and win back that pawn on C6. But Black plays, I believe, the correct move here. I don't know theory exactly. And Black's next move is good, but here's a chance and I've seen it happen so many times at the lower rating levels. I mean, you know, about 1450, 1500 is your average rating, so this is just barely on the cusp of your average. But there's a chance, if white's not careful, for black to win a piece here with the old infamous Noah's Ark trap. Now black can try and set it up. White has defenses. Let's take a look and I'll show you what it is. I'll play some bad moves by white so he falls right into it. But here we go. Okay, if pawn takes, white can run into some trouble here in a hurry. Okay, he can't take the pawn on d4. In the fast time control, he may just grab it, and this gives black basically a winning position. He now plays knight takes knight, and white needs to retake. And then suddenly this move c5 comes in, and the queen's loose, and the queen has to move. Where are you going to put it? You know, let's put it on e3, and then there you have it. Lo and behold, Noah's Ark trap. The bishop is trapped behind a wall of pawns, and they call it the Noah's Ark trap because it's supposed to be as old as Noah's Ark. That's the that's the story behind it. That's what I learned when I was about 11 or 12 years old. Anyway, white doesn't have to go into that, but it's very easy for white to go into it if he's not paying attention. So white has other interesting moves here. Let's look at one of them. Probably his best move is to play knight g5, and this puts a direct threat on f7, which black is going to have to deal with pronto. Okay, putting the bishop on e6 just doesn't cut it. You're going to drop a pawn. Okay, so I think black is forced to play knight e5. And now the knight on e5 covers f7. But and white's got some interesting moves here. He could play f4, and we'll just analyze this out. This is to drive the knight away from protection of f7, and again this leaves black one choice. And now he's going to pick up the bishop pair. Okay, and then white can play queen takes d4, and black's pawn on c6 or c4 is loose. Okay, so maybe you know, it's tricky, but maybe black can actually get the worst of this, because if let's see, white has 7 pawns, black has 7 pawns. Black's going to lose that pawn on c4. It looks like. Well, maybe not, but it can get ugly here. Let's see, how do we try to defend it? We want to get the bishop to e6, so we weaken our pawn structure, drive the knight back, and then put the bishop here, and then f5 comes, and I guess we're going to lose. Well, no, we're not going to lose that pawn. We play bishop b5. We may still lose it. See, white can't play queen takes c4 because bishop b5, but white has some good moves here. One is knight c3, and it looks like that pawn's a goner. If black plays bishop b5, white will just kick the bishop out with a5. So what black has to do is say, okay, fine, you're going to win the pawn. I'm going to develop, and then bishop e7. Let's go ahead and take it, just to try to illustrate a point. Okay. Oop. So anyway, what's happened here is black has lost a pawn, but he's got a little bit of compensation. His development's slightly better. He's got all 3 minor pieces out, and there is a nice hole on e5 for what it's worth. Black can probably occupy that eventually. His a6 pawn is weak. His king side's a little bit compromised, but it's not exactly clear how white's going to continue here. White needs to get developed, and it is his move. Let's see. Let's kind of just carry this out a little bit. Bishop f4. Okay, now what's black going to do? Well, we got to get the queen developed. We got to get the rooks developed. Where are we going to put things? Just try to look at a possible sample line. White has no real threat. one way to get the queen developed is to play it to b8. Now this has a tempo on this pawn. Okay, now let's just suppose white protects it. Now the queen can come up with a check. Okay, for what it's worth, the queen can come up with a check, and then white can interpose his queen. Might want to keep the queen on the board. Let's just put the king in the corner. You know, this is how you analyze the game. You consider the possibilities, and you carry each one out a little bit. And now, for what it's worth, black's getting his pieces developed, and then maybe he's ready for bishop c6 and park it back on e8 and keep an eye on e4. Black has some compensation for the pawn, but not full compensation. So, you know, it's an attempt to win a piece, and it may work. I don't recommend it on the higher level, but actually, we'll go back to this. Let's back things up and look at the other alternative. Since taking with the pawn gave white some potential counterplay, let's try taking with the knight instead. Now, what we're trying to do is grab this bishop, okay? At the same time, this knight is free at some point to come back to e6 unless white tries to regain the pawn. So the only way for white to try to regain the pawn is to take the knight. But once again, we've transposed into the position I showed earlier, and white cannot take the pawn on c5. So white must make a preparation here. There's a couple ways to do it. You can offer another pawn, and now black's going to be a pawn ahead, but white will get some development, but that might be okay. The other way is just simply play a4, and let's have a look at this move. Now the black should play this. Now white can get away with taking the pawn on d4. Okay, and if he doesn't, black may very well play c5 and just try to hang on to it. So let's see, queen takes. Let's see where this goes. Okay, we tickle the queen again, and now look, we've shoved the bishop back and out of play, and it's probably premature to take on e5 or e4 because of the pin. So black just develops his piece, and he's sitting kind of pretty here. So this isn't all that bad for black, and again, it requires some further analysis to see if this is safe and sound. But I wanted to show the theme. So it appears the correct way to take, if you're going to take, is to take with the knight. But what black does instead is not a bad move at all. Bishop g4, and this is thematic in this type of position. Now the pawn on d4 is hanging. Okay, there's nothing guarding it. This knight is not guarding it because the defensive power of a pinned piece is purely imaginary. So this knight's not defending anything because the queen is behind it. So and if white's not careful, if he plays d5, this knight will come into d4, and he's threatening to double up the white pawns. So let's see what white does. What does white do? You know, it's one of those things where the PGN gets lost when you get into a sideline. So I've got to reinsert it. This just takes a minute, or a moment actually. Let's get it back. Okay, now we're clear of all those notes. So bishop g4. So white plays c3, but you know that doesn't really guard the pawn on d4. So black makes a blunder here. Let's back this up. Maybe white has to play d5, and that's got some drawbacks. It shuts off the diagonal of this bishop. Okay. Now what black should do is now bring the knight into d4, and now white plays knight bd2 to avoid getting double pawns. Now the best move, I believe, for black is to develop a piece, bishop e7. You know, there's no use trading this bishop off. Look, it's got no scope. It's shut off on all the center pawns are shutting off its diagonals toward the king side. So there's just a waste of time to grab this ugly bishop. It's much better to develop a piece and have your pieces coordinated. Now white's kind of in a little bit of a quandary here. How does he break out of this pin? Well, in my mind, the only way to do it is to play c3 now. Now, black could take this bishop, but I think it's kind of silly. Let's just take the knight and keep the pin alive. Okay, now we've kept the pin alive. Okay, and I think black's doing fine here. He could probably even get away with taking on e4. So maybe c3 is premature. Maybe white has to stop and defend that pawn first. Okay, but that gives black time to castle. And now we play c3. Knight takes, knight takes. Now black maintains this pin on the knight. And look, black's actually ahead in development. He doesn't have a great deal of scope for his pieces necessarily, but there's some interesting plans that black can employ here. One is to play queen d7. This connects the rooks, and white may put the question to the bishop, and black can take it or redirect the bishop back to g6, where it pressures e4. Well, white can defend it, but if he plays bishop h5, you know, this is horribly weakening, and black could even consider. It looks like that works. Knight takes pawn. Wow, look at that. Knight takes pawn. What's white going to do? If he takes back with the pawn, you take with the queen with check, and you're going to win the piece back. So white can't play g4. What's white going to do? Well, let's try another line. Let's bring the bishop out. We're going to have to get some development. Or do you want to break the pin? Let's break the pin so that knight's free. That's such a nuisance of a pin. Let's break it. Okay, now it's black's turn. What's he want to do? It would be great to open up this F file. You know, black has the potential pawn break. So how do we go about doing that? Well, we need to move our knight. Let's put it on E8 just for the sake of a square. Now we're getting ready for F5. Oops, that's a knight move. We're getting ready for F5. Now, if white wants, he can play G4, but that still weakens his position, his kingside. But let's just try it, just illustrate, and then let's develop this bishop. Let's put it on D2. I don't want in the way of a lot of things. Okay, now F5 is stopped, but black has some options here. H5. You know, the black king is quite safe. Maybe some lines are going to open up, and both sides can try to coordinate an attack. You know, it's double-edged, and this isn't necessarily the best line or a forced line, but this is how you analyze a position. You just start looking at ideas and themes, and if this doesn't work, if you're not happy with this, you go look for something else, and hopefully eventually, if you just keep crunching the possible potential variations, you find something that you're satisfied with, that you're comfortable playing. And there's no point really taking this further. I've just explained it. Both sides may end up with some potential kingside attacking chances here. You know, white can lock up the king side, but then black has the f6 break at his disposal. You know, there's all kinds of potential here. Okay, so instead of doing my suggestion, black makes a blunder. And what do we attribute it to? Well, we can say the time on the clock. Okay, we can say the time on the clock did black in here. Okay, because there's a couple reasonable moves here, other than what he did. I mean, one is just to take the knight off. Now, what's white going to do? He needs to retake it, and he's got two ways to take it. So, a neat thing about when you're looking for candidate moves is that when you make a forcing move, your opponent has fewer replies. Now, does white have a Zwischenzug? Well, maybe. Let's see. Bishop takes f7 check, drops it, sacks a piece. The queen gets another check, and you're running out of gas. That's just no good. So, if white takes with the pawn, you could say that black has achieved his aim. He's weakened the white king side. Now he'll just continue his development and go from there. And that may be forced because on queen takes, there's some poison here. The poison being that if pawn takes, the knight will take here, and then maybe that's a good time to get rid of this bishop because it's now active. So the queen moves. Let's say put it on. I don't want to put it on g3. That'll lose the queen. Let's just put it on b1, and now takes and takes, and now let's finish our development. Bishop e7, getting ready to castle and play queen d7, and black's just up a clear pawn. So black could have done well with by capturing the knight. It just kind of puts white in a quandary. But instead, black made a blunder here and essentially lost a piece. I admire for wanting to win a knight, but win a pawn, but it drops a piece. White's e4 pawn is hanging, but it's protected by a counter threat. Whoop, we don't want to play that. Black played knight takes e4, and unfortunately white has a good reply, and here it is, bishop d5, which is forking two knights. Now why did black miss this? Well, part of the reason is your time control, 30 minutes. That's got to be part of it. Sometimes we turn a blind eye. We say I can win a pawn, and you don't think any further. You don't look at the boomerang that pops up here. So my recommendation for black is to definitely try to get into some longer time control games and post his information in the forum, and look at the other ones that are posted there and find somebody near, above, or below your rating and contact them and try and arrange some games. The alternative is go to your local chess club in your area. There's always ways to find a club. So anyway, basically white now has a winning game. Okay, white's a clear piece up, but and he just plays a game of attrition, starts playing a game of attrition on black, and unfortunately for white, he doesn't play this accurately. So what do you do when you're down a piece? Well, common sense says just resign and start a new one, but this is a 30-minute game, just like a blitz game. A lot of people, when they play blitz, they'll be down a piece or two. Well, let's just keep playing. There's an old adage, nobody ever won by resigning. A lot of times the other side runs short of time or blunders and allows a stalemate. And, it's similar here. I don't know how much time's elapsed because we don't have a timestamp, but probably the game, they probably both have about 20 minutes left, maybe a little bit more. So in 40 minutes, black's going to win or lose anyway, so might as well keep going. If this time control is 40 moves in 2 hours and you run into this, it's just time to resign, call it an evening, and head on home. Okay. But anyway, let's see what happens. Now black gets a little bit of counterplay, attacking a pinned knight, and so black busts open the white king side, which is good. He's making some progress back, but unfortunately, white is still a piece ahead, and there's nothing black can do about that. He's gained a little bit of ground back, but technically he hasn't gained enough. And I think what he does next is wise. He castles on the queen side, because if he's going to do anything at all, it's attack the white king that suddenly has a weakness or two in front of him. And what happens now is black goes into white goes into a anything wins mode. I can just make moves and win, and pretty soon white's going to blunder, and we'll see when we get there. So don't worry too much about the pawns. You're already down a piece. One more pawn doesn't hurt, and it does take white time to grab that pawn, and he's doing so at the cost of development. Here they are. Why aren't these guys in the game? The knight on b1 and the rook on a1. Why aren't they in the game? Well, here's one reason. This queen is grabbing pawns, and it does have a threat. It's attacking a a bishop on e7 and a pawn on g7, but it's opened up another line for black. At some point, black has an f-file to possibly operate on. But black plays bishop g7, which safeguards the bishop. And we don't care if he takes the pawn on g7 necessarily because we pin it. So what pin the queen? What other alternatives are there? Well, one is to play rook e1. And then obviously black can't, or white can't play queen takes g7. He's going to get his queen pinned. But this is okay. You know, he's trying. Now knight d2. White's finally focused on getting his development. And then black seizes the file that I mentioned. And white escapes with a check, gain of time. And now he centralizes his knight. And here, I'm pretty convinced white's basically just winning. I think f4 does poor black in. I don't know. Let's see. He didn't play f4, but okay, what do you do against f4? It's twice protected. It's twice attacked. You're limited in your options. You can't play rook f6. You can kick the queen with rook e8, and the queen just backs up. Or you bring the bishop back, and then white just makes another piece trade. And see, whoop. Well, does he have anything on the e-file here? No, he doesn't, because the knight's covering it. Okay, so takes. But the queen, well, you got to be careful where you put that queen. Maybe I'm wrong. No, we can go back to e4. Okay, can't go to g4, but get pinned. And black doesn't have control of the e-file, so even though the white king side position is a little loose, white's managed to trade off another piece and should win this. But anyway, he didn't play f4. He played bishop d4, and you know that's good too. It's trying to trade off pieces. Okay, so what's black do? He declines the exchange, and actually it turns out this is one of the reasons why f4 would have been good. It gives white a chance now to blunder, and that's exactly what he does. He blunders. Okay, so white gets greedy and doesn't analyze the position. He says, oh look, bishop takes g7. Not only do I win a pawn, I fork his two rooks. Well, now the game is just about even, because white's going to give some material back here, and here it comes. Rook g8. And so white says, oh, I got to guard my bishop, so he guards it like this. But black takes advantage of a pin and plays bishop h6. Now here, white's going to have to work, but white missed a better move here. Okay, what white played was king h1, and that's just going to outright get him in trouble. But white missed queen takes rook here. Okay, it forces rook takes, and you know this is a forced line. Now white has two rooks for the queen. Yeah, it's d5 is weak, but white can put more defenders on there than black can put attackers. Black's queen can attack it. Black's king can attack it, but getting the king out there with rooks on the board and that knight that'll hop around, it can be very difficult to attack that pawn. So this game's probably even. It's going to be hard for black to win this. It's going to take some blunders, but this would have been black's best or white's best choice, and he didn't even consider it, I guess. I think it's that mind block that some of us get. We see, oh, there's a rook. I can't take the rook because I lose my queen. Well, you know, you're getting two rooks for the queen, and that's almost always a good deal. You know, almost always. Sometimes it won't be, but this is a position where it's a perfectly good deal. So instead, oh, he didn't play that. He played king h1. And this just basically gives black the piece back. And white's a pawn ahead, but black's got a nice position now. he's got his rooks over on the king side where they're attacking. He's threatening to take a pawn on d5, getting the queen into play. The bishop's got all kinds of mobility now. It can make go to e5 and be threatening to do a lot of things. Put the rook on f3, double rooks on one of those two files. Anyway, white goes into defensive mode. He covers that. Now bishop e5 is recommended. And now white gets the knight over. Let's see. Not so much concerned about how white could have improved, but white needs more action with his rooks. The knight's fine on e4. Black can't chase it out. It's probably wise to try to trade a set of rooks here, and then ride this position out upon a head. So moving the knight just going to run into some trouble, and you'll see right here. It's another fork. Just like black walked into a fork, now white has walked into a fork. So now suddenly black is a piece ahead, and now black has the winning game. So how quickly the fortunes can turn. Okay, so now black finishes the game off. He's done making mistakes. He doesn't make any more, and you know, that's it. You know, you can't let your opponent back in the game. You can count on him to make another mistake. Maybe he's going to stop. Okay, so now white finds a good move, or black finds a good move. Says, "Go ahead, take my bishop," and white can't take the bishop because, well, why? Pause the video if you're not sure. Okay, resume. Why can't white take that bishop on f6? Well, because there's this really ugly threat down here of mate in 1. So that forces white to trade queens, and now it's just a winning position for black. Black's up a piece. White has 2 pawns for it, but they're not long for the world. They are isolated. They're weak. Now let's see. Could white have defended his pawn by rook d3? Maybe. Might have probably been his best choice, but he didn't. Played f4, which just gives up a pawn with check. But nonetheless, the position was winning for black. And black could take this pawn here, but instead he decides to centralize his king a little bit. Oop, hit the wrong button. Okay, king d7. I guess black's aim is to get it, like I say, get his king activated. And white can't get at it in any way, shape, or form. Now the king just kind of walks into trouble here. And then black finds a good move. And white blunders again. d5 check. What can white do here? He's probably going to lose. He probably can't. He can play king f3. Well, here I'll show you what happens. He plays this move, and basically that just means that white loses his rook. There's no way. The king is overworked. He was guarding both rooks. So white needed to play king f3. So how does black make headway here? There's lots of ways. You can always trade the rook and grab this pawn, but you haven't dealt with this pawn, but it's not much of a threat. We can drive the king back. That's not bad. Now, if we take on f4, well, this works. Just take this in light of anything else. Boom. And game will be won soon enough by black. So it was a good comeback. After his initial blunder, black got back in the game, and white got greedy and didn't pay attention. So that's why I say there are rating points to be had down there if you can eliminate your mistakes, and hopefully I've shown black how to avoid some mistakes and, you know, focus on development and instead of grabbing pawns, and black should be okay. Alright, that concludes this video. There'll be another one very soon. I want to thank everyone for their time, and good chess to y'all. Take care. Bye now.